How's it going, guys? I'm WeedEater69 and welcome to the video. Today we'll be looking at sections from my personal favorite video game of all time, Silent Hill 2. Now, I'll be ranking them today based on enemy placement, the puzzles, the environment itself, the actual aesthetic. I'll be taking all these things into consideration when I'm making this ranking. I will also only be taking the remake into account, as when I originally planned to film for this video, I was planning to put both in, but I ended up getting about 6 hours of footage from the remake alone, so we're going to end up putting the original in a video probably next week, so stay tuned for that. Enjoy the video, guys. If you like what I do, you can subscribe for more, and I speedrun both versions of Silent Hill 2 over on my Twitch, so link in the description, and now, on with the list. Enjoy the video, guys. Now this was hard, because every area in this game is amazing, for the fact that they all serve a purpose in the greater narrative of the game. But, unfortunately, just like with most all horror media, the opening area of Silent Hill is the worst area in the game. Now, exploring all the shops in the remake was a nice touch to make the section somewhat more cohesive in the remake, but let's be real here. The main purpose of this area is to act somewhat as of a tutorial. I mean, you get your first weapon, you explore, you solve the puzzles, you move on to the next area. It's all very standard Silent Hill. The enemy variety is also not here at all. We have the one enemy we are introduced to, the lying figure, which in both the original and the remake are complete pushovers. You can just whack them a few times, or you can just literally ignore them. They really won't hurt you at all. Despite all this, as the opening of the game, it still manages to be engaging and gets you ready for the terrors that await further. Now, the hotel has the majority of the same complaints I had with the opening. However, by this point in the game, the puzzles are much more complex and interesting, and the enemies in the hotel are quite threatening. In the remake, there's these uncaged mandarins in particular, which I'm not a fan of. I'll talk about them more in a Silent Hill 2 enemy ranking video, but simply put, they are annoying as all hell. And the devs decided to put them in the forced stealth section, where you're forced to put all your stuff on a shelf and go to the basement, and circle back around to get your stuff again. The first half has you going around finding these music boxes of princesses in order to solve a music box puzzle to get the key to the wing where James and Mary's room was. The second half of the hotel is very linear, really only serving to tie up the story and give us two epic boss fights with the double pyramid head and the Maria fights. The remake took the Maria fight in particular and added 2 phases, turning it into the proper final boss it always deserved to be. The town at night is ranked higher than its daytime counterpart for simply one reason. It's dark. And when it's dark, it's scarier. It's science. This section, like the intro, serves as a bridge between the first and second half of the game, where there's a clear shift of going from exploring the town of Silent Hill to exploring James's mind. For the tone shift alone of walking out of the hospital, seeing it dark and going, holy shit, how am I going to navigate this? It gets some extra brownie points. There's now lying figures, nurses, and mannequins all flooding the streets, and they can be quite a lot to deal with, especially on a first playthrough, and the remake makes it all the more challenging with the enemies being way more aggressive. The remake adds in a couple of other things into the mix, a new cutscene with Angela, and then we get to go to the bowling alley from the original game, all culminating in a long walk up the road to the Historical Society. The Historical Society serves as sort of an intro to the prison level. However, since it and the prison both have their own separate maps, I'm including them as separate entries. From the moment you walk into the quiet, empty room, looking around and you see the giant pyramid head painting, and then a few minutes later seeing a giant staircase that seemingly goes nowhere, you know you're in for a terrifyingly good time. This section is also home to one of my least favorite sections in the series, the bug room. Now, in the original, you would have had to have grabbed the battery in the hospital prior to getting to this point, and if you didn't, your light wouldn't turn on and you would soft lock the game. However, in the remake, they got rid of the battery gimmick and instead made the cockroaches in the room way more aggressive. So now, instead of being able to remember my codes, I get hit every 5 seconds. Thanks, Konami. Thanks a lot. The section culminates with James jumping down a hole, and then the camera does a really cool pan to make him look as if he's being dragged down a hall. The subtleties in this game are unmatched, and this shot is really all you need to see to understand what I'm talking about. Now, similarly to the Historical Society and the prison, I'm breaking up both apartments into their own entries. Especially with the remake's change of tone between the two, I couldn't justify lumping both Woodside and Blue Creek into one entry. Unfortunately, one has to be worse, and in both the remake and the original's case, I would probably pick Woodside. This is the first proper dungeon area of the game, serving as your introduction to the dark and cramped world of Silent Hill. The puzzles in Woodside aren't much other than a coin puzzle, which isn't too hard if you understand poems, and then a couple of safe combinations here and there. The enemy variety gets a bit more interesting in the Woodside apartments too, as we get introduced to the Mannequin. Enemies with 2 sets of legs for bodies that will hide and ambush James. In the remake in particular, they are way more aggressive. I know all these things sound like praise, and they are. It's a great section. I just prefer what's to come later. After getting through both apartments and having a close encounter with Pyramid Head, we're left to explore the second half of Silent Hill. This time we get a companion, Maria. Now, Maria only shows up to follow you around twice, and luckily both times she isn't much of a nuisance to bring around, unlike some people. Eileen from Silent Hill 4. Maria takes you to a couple of different spots, a motel, a strip club called Heaven's Night, a garden, and a movie theater. You do some exploring in these areas, but for the most part, it's just to progress the story along. We're chasing Laura around, she's gonna take us to the hospital, the plot develops. However, after the intensity and the chaos of the apartments, I love just vibing out to Alone in the Town. The other apartment building, the Blue Creek Apartments, takes place right after Woodside. Right after James finds a door to lead him out of Woodside, he ends up in this flooded version of the area before. In both versions, it serves as a more dilapidated and otherworldly part of the apartments, but in the remake in particular, they seem to make it a more traditional Silent Hill otherworld we know and love. The enemy variety here is the same as in Woodside, however in the remake we now have the clock puzzle here instead of Woodside, and we are unlocking new sections of the apartments as we solve the clock puzzle. I absolutely love what Bloober did here for this section. The fact that while you're solving the clock puzzle, you can actually see the Pyramid Head boss arena the whole time, I thought was a really nice touch. Speaking of Pyramid Head, we get thrown into a timed boss battle with him at the end of the level. You can damage him here to make the time go faster like I like to do, but you can also go for the safer strat of just running around and baiting his attacks. Now the hospital I'm going to put together as one section, as I feel it shines the most as a cohesive 2-part level. Part 1 has you unlocking doors to solve puzzles. Now in the original we would get codes to open the Louise box to eventually get an elevator key and make it downstairs to the other side of the hospital. But in the remake it's switched, so we get a roof key to get choked and thrown down to the first floor by Big Daddy Pyramid Head. This floor of the hospital also has the flesh lips, which I will talk about more in my boss ranking, but I really preferred the original's way of designing the fight. Part 2 serves as an Otherworld section, and while a bit more brief, the atmosphere in this section up to this point is unmatched. Most people get to this part of the game and say, how can it get any more scarier? And then Pyramid Head shows up and chases you. This is the only other section of the game where you have Maria as a companion, and how you treat her here actually plays a lot into what ending you get, as her first death serves as the end of Act 1 of the game. The enemies and puzzles here are a clear step up from the apartments, introducing nurses that are super aggressive, and they absolutely eat your ammo. I try my best to avoid them, but if I can't help it, I'll just give them the old pistol headshot. Overall, if you were to ask where the true horror of Silent Hill was, I would say here is a great place to look. There's only 2 more sections that win out in being absolutely balls to the wall scary. Now the prison and its following area, the labyrinth, are the scariest in the game for the same reason, so I'll be talking about both in both entries because they lead into each other that well. The prison starts off with Eddie going absolutely insane, seemingly just killed someone before we walked in. From here, you explore the cells and are subjected to the banging of the prisoners and all the enemies crawling around. In the original, you collect some slabs to unlock the other area of the prison and eventually move on. In the remake, you now have 4 separate areas, each bigger than the original prison, each having its own weight puzzle correspond to it. The remake took the original vibe of the prison and turned the anxiety slider to high. Mannequins can now crawl on the ceilings and jump out at you, and nurses and lying figures are littered around as well. My favorite part of the prison in the remake is the shower room where you walk in and all the enemies are dead, and when you grab the weight and try to leave, they all spring to life and start attacking you. You end the prison just how you started it, by jumping through more holes until you eventually get to an elevator that goes on for a long time to bring you into the depths of James's personal torment and his inner psyche. The number one spot today goes to the Labyrinth, and whereas the prison does a great job of setting that oppressive mood and atmosphere, the Labyrinth perfects it, especially in the remake. In the original, the Labyrinth is pretty simple. It starts out by having us explore with no map to find some bolt cutter, to eventually lead us to the second half of the catacombs to fight the Abstract Daddy, and eventually Eddie. However, the remake, we now start with the Abstract Daddy fight, and the area itself takes the Box of Faces puzzle needed to get the bolt cutters in the original as the basis for the entire map. By moving the faces, we move the rooms around, and therefore allowing us to go into different sections of the area. In doing this, Bloober has sectioned off the Labyrinth into 3 areas: the Rotten area, the Desolate area, and the Ruined area. The Desolate area shines the most in terms of the oppressive atmosphere that was carried over from the original, but all the areas feel disgusting and horrible to go through, especially with the addition of Pyramid Head chasing James all the way to the end of the area. The remake Labyrinth also added on a section where we must use the Great Knife to go through a wall of mannequin legs, which was in the original trailer for the game, but never made it to the game until now, which I thought was a really nice touch by Bloober. The whole story also comes to a head here, and both Angela and Eddie come face to face with their demons in the form of the Abstract Daddy and Eddie's boss fights. What else can I say? It's the best part of the game. It always has been and always will be for me. But that's just my opinion. Let me know yours down below. If you like this video, remember to comment and subscribe to let the algorithm know that you want to see more of me. And if you want to see more Silent Hill 2 Remake, go follow me on my Twitch. I speedrun the game on Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.